Good evening. I'm Amy Usowski. I'm the Conservation Administrator for the town of Harwich. And sitting next to me is David Spitz, the town planner. And tonight we are going to give you a brief presentation on the 2016 Town of Harwich Open Space and Recreation Plan Revision. As some of you may be familiar, approximately every 5 years or so is what we target for revising the town's open space and recreation plan. And the last time we have done a revision is 2010. David and myself and the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission have looked at the draft and submitted a draft to the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs for comment, and they've let us know a couple areas that we need to shore up. But before we get to the final stages, we wanted to give a public presentation to the town residents and to take any questions and feedback that you may have. I just asked, this is a pretty short presentation. If you would just hold your questions until the end, and David and I would be happy to answer them. Oops. So real briefly, for anybody who's not familiar, the history and purpose of the Open Space and Recreation Plan. The first one in Harwich was adopted in 1998. The 2016 revision is the second update. The second one was in 2010. David and I, we've started in early 2015 along with the help of Heather McElroy over at the county for doing this third revision. Second revision, third plan. And what this plan does is incorporates info and recommendations from the 2011 Local Comprehensive Plan, as well as the 2013 Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, as well as other management plans that we do have throughout the town departments. And what this plan does is includes an assessment of current open space and recreational needs for the town, a statement of goals and objectives, and an action plan to meet these goals. The purpose of an open space and recreation plan such as this is to lay out a plan for management of existing town lands and facilities, and to lay the framework on how to select new parcels and to manage them. And me personally, I'm going to be speaking a lot about management of our town conservation parcels, because acquiring parcels is important, but managing them is the next step. And I guess before we go along any farther, I was thinking about this today, and I thought it wise to talk a little bit about what really open space is, because it's a hard thing to define. When you're in the conservation world like I am, you automatically think of it from a conservation lens as protected land. But open space is not necessarily protected land. Open space is pretty much land without any structures to it. It could be golf courses, it can be private open land, it can be land held by an entity such as the Harwich Conservation Trust. It could be open land held by the selectmen. So only a portion of open space land is under what I have as Conservation Commission control. And there's about 1,000 acres of open space in the town of Harwich. Combine that with about 600 acres that the trust owns, we're doing pretty good. So real quickly, the goals and objectives of the 2016 Open Space and Rec Plan. These are right from this document, which is available online on the town website. And it's strategic acquisition of environmentally sensitive properties. We'll talk a little bit about criteria as we go along for looking at those properties and picking them. Optimal projection of the town's natural resources, protection and enhancement of the town's character, and development of village centers. Just to bring everybody up to speed on some of the highlights that things we were able to accomplish between 2010 and 2015. In the last plan of the 2010 plan, some of the goals were to create a priority list of new acquisitions and a checklist to evaluate new properties. Between those 5 years, we have successfully done that. We have a working list, David and I, of existing town lands, and also a priority list for new acquisitions. One of the things we look at in particular when we're evaluating a parcel is connectivity to other conservation land. And I think with some of our purchases in the past 5 years, particularly in the case of what we call the Verrocchi property along the West Reservoir, is a key example of connecting with other conservation land. In the past 5 years, we've acquired 7 new parcels with 36 new acres. We have adopted 2 brand new land management plans, one for the Bell's Neck Conservation Area and one for the Island Pond Conservation Area, and a 10 parcel stewardship report. This was funded at I believe the 2011 or 2012, one of those town meetings, to fund a consulting group to come in, look at Bell's Neck, look at Island Pond in depth over a year-long period of time, all seasons, look at the flora and fauna that's there, and also look at the issues such as encroachment and dumping and other illegal activities, and they've made recommendations on how we can improve that, as well as for the Bell's Neck. And the 10 parcel stewardship report encompasses many other parcels that we have in town, such as the Texera property or the Isabel Smith Monomoy River Woodlands. And it's a little bit less detailed, but it has given us a list of priorities where we should focus our efforts in terms of management of these parcels. The town of Harwich has done an amazing job over the past years of acquiring land, thinking to the future, and making sure that we do preserve enough conservation land. So now comes the even harder part of the management of it. And these land management plans and stewardship reports have really helped us go in the right direction with that. The Muddy Creek project has been through permitting and public process for the past 3 years, and I can happily say that it is currently, as you all know, ongoing. The detours are up. The roadway has been removed, and very shortly we will be driving in the new sheet pilings, and within the next few weeks opening that river up for so it no longer has tidal restrictions as it does. We hope that project, and we are very sure that that project will be done around Memorial Day. Something very interesting from the conservation standpoint is in the past 5 years, due to our ongoing efforts, volunteers, conservation department, and other town entities have really assisted the conservation department in managing the Thompson's Field Conservation Area. We have thinned out a number of pitch pines and oaks on the north side in attempts to recreate the sandplain grassland heathland, which is a globally rare habitat. On the Route 39 side of Thompson's Field, that's all that cutting that you see going on, that's what it's related to bring back this sandplain grassland habitat. We've attracted a brand new endangered species. It's a butterfly, the hoary elfin, and it only likes sandplain grassland heathland habitats. So we've actually managed our land to create a critical habitat type. This is just an overview of open space in the town of Harwich. You can see all the different colors, and as I alluded to earlier, open space is not just conservation land. Open space takes many different, there's many different types of open space. The pink is town, the lighter pink is town. The darker pink, I believe, is trust. The dark green is the state forest you see up there. The orange is the golf course. So it's not all one thing. But this also shows you the wide, that we've really concentrated on trying to preserve open space in all areas of town. And again, we chatted a little bit about the Verrocchi property. That's the one on the bottom left there with the star on it. And that has been a key acquisition to add to the Bell's Neck conservation lands and provide water quality protection to the Herring River, which is one of the most major herring runs in the state of Massachusetts. And then most recently, the Downey property, which now connects to the Saquatucket harbor system. And we are in the planning phases currently for how to develop and how to better that property. And then the Muddy Creek Bridge, that's a rendition of what it will look like from the current restricted side on the west side of 28. So we're going to spend most of our time on goals. I'm going to go over first few, and then David is going to take over and go through some of the others that pertain more to planning. Goal 1 is to maintain an existing inventory of town-owned property and identify appropriate uses. We are constantly updating this inventory. One of the things we're focusing on is, now that we have all this land, at least getting out even to the small parcels and doing a quick look to see if there's any issues there, and updating our system to reflect action items that we need to take on those parcels, and maintaining the GIS system as well. And then goal 2, we have implement land management plans for existing conservation areas. As I previously mentioned, we've recently done plans for the Bell's Neck as well as Island Pond. Our goal, I would say, in the next 5 years is to create a new land management plan for the town forest. Goal 3 is identify future open space acquisitions. This is a key, something that the Real Estate and Open Space Committee is highly involved in. They have actually a criteria, Real Estate and Open Space rating sheet. We're not only, where the Real Estate and Open Space Committee is not only entertaining people who want to give or have or sell open space to the town, but they're actually going after properties that are in key locations due to being in natural, sensitive areas, priority habitat, being particularly in sensitive areas for water quality protection, things like that. Criteria, there's a whole list of criteria for this rating sheet, going from acreage on a property, whether or not it abuts other conservation land, if it could be a cooperative project with other entities, if it's near wetlands or waterways, if it's near, and if it contributes to a recreation or other type of even housing need in the town for and enhanced trail systems in the open space, within open space areas. Now that we're acquiring these extra properties, such as Viroki and the Bell's Neck, we are pursuing on how to expand our trail systems to encompass those areas so people can go out and appreciate the land that they helped purchase. Is this you?
Yeah. We don't have to say much about these. We're going to just breeze through these. Well, actually, Goal 5, Amy, really is conservation. The protection of natural resources. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the second part of it. Protection of natural resources and community character through growth management strategies. I've got a few slides at the end. I'm going to cover that at that time. Then we're back to conservation ones. Preserve and enhance the following natural resources: groundwater, surface water, coastal water, adjacent shoreline areas, etc. And I believe a lot of those are in the areas that Amy covers. Do you want to say anything more about that, or should we just? So I think we've covered those. And then the last three are very specific. Solid hazardous waste products, and unique natural and man-made features and resources. That gets a lot over into the historic area. And the last one, of course, is recreation. Both passive and active, which is very different. I characterize the open space and real estate plan as being 90% open space and conservation with its emphasis, and 10% recreation. But that's okay, because a lot of what this town is concerned about is what we're conserving for conservation's sake. So let's keep going. So this section, I've got 3 or 4 slides. I want to give a little context first. Planners are always looking for how things fit together and what makes a town tick and what does a town really have to worry about. This first plan was done well before I was involved in 2000 at a time when the Cape was growing very fast and Harwich was very concerned about being overrun by development. Certainly that's still a concern, but in 2000 it was a very big concern. One of the responses was use of the land bank funds. The Real Estate and Open Space Committee at the time and the town in general started to identify and acquire large tracts of open space. There were open space tracts in town already, including the State Hawk Nest State Park. But there were enough parcels preserved by the land bank effort starting around 2000 to create a much greater amount of, the ones you saw in pink and so forth, and a few in green on Amy's previous slide, a lot of those were purchased from land bank funds. The town has been paying debt service on that and will continue to do so for another 10, 15 years. And now the Real Estate Open Space Committee is pretty much doing things that we can pay off in a shorter period of time, rather than the major effort that was done in 2000. The next open space plan was done 10 years later. I got here in 2009. I was told, we need this open space plan within the next month and a half because we're applying for a grant for one of the parcels of land that we're buying, and we need to have this thing approved in time. And we threw it together, and it wasn't a very carefully thought out process. But there was one thing that was really emphasized in 2009 that was not in 2000. It was still, let's continue to acquire land, but let's start to think about management. And what I'm happy to say is we're doing the plan in 2015 is that with Amy's efforts and with others, we've done a heck of a lot in the last 5 years on managing what we have. I would characterize as a result the 2015 plan as mostly recognizing what we've done and continuing the goals that we set forth in 2000. I'm going to get to that slide second, but first, as part of the public effort in putting the draft together, sending the draft plan to the state last July, we did a public survey in June. We advertised it with as many avenues as we could, and we managed to get 379 responses, mostly online. No, it's not a scientific survey. We didn't cull out and make sure everybody was representative in terms of age bracket and whatever else. But we got a good number of responses, which was well up from the number of responses in the previous 2 plans. And just a couple of quick results. Should the town continue to acquire and preserve open space and natural areas? 85%, that 5% said that's very important, 10% important, and only 5% said it was neutral or not important. What are important types of land protection? I only put the top 3. There were a bunch of others on the list. Guess it's almost, I don't know who the 1% was on the top one, but protect groundwater, drinking water, and watersheds was supported by 99% of the responses. Wildlife habitat areas, 96%, land around ponds and lakes, 90%. I think the lowest one on the list was around 75 or 80%. But, and a couple other responses I didn't write down. What are the highest quality recreation? What's the highest quality recreation facility in town? It was actually listed as the bike trails. Favorite conservation areas, Bell's Neck, 125 responses, and Amy's dear friend Thompson Field, 63 responses. We have a friendly crowd tonight, so we're going to just keep going beyond that statement. Flip side of open space protection is, of course, how is the town developing? Well, the town is now about 80% developed, but there's still a lot of debates about what continues to happen from here. And I say, this was not written exactly this way in the plan, but what I feel, we really need to have a balance between open space and developed land. So what we said back in 2000 was adopt a no net change philosophy. We have a certain amount of zoning, well, okay, that leaves us a lot of room for growth. That should be what we work within. Number 2, manage growth by shifting development pressure from sensitive to less sensitive areas. That remains a hugely important goal, though I will say the encouraged transfer of development rights is less a priority now just because that technique is very difficult to make work. It's a wonderful concept right now in terms of suggesting how things are actually going to get done. I personally do not recommend that one as the highest priority. But managing growth by shifting development pressure from sensitive to less sensitive areas as an overall goal is still hugely important. From the 2000 plan, recognize that change and growth are natural components of a healthy community. Number 4, I always consider myself first and foremost a village-based planner or a growth center planner. Enhance villages by allowing more residents to live near and help support local businesses. And directly related to that, the last one on this page, provide adequate public facilities and amenities in growth centers. So are we really very different in this plan? No. What we've added in this plan is, in different places, channel future growth to mixed-use growth centers. That's really the same thing. Where wastewater, we're mentioning that more prominently, and other infrastructure may be provided economically. Transfer of development rights is problematic in my opinion, but encourage stronger cluster provisions in areas such as Six Ponds. We had a couple of letters in advance of this hearing. One was from a neighbor to a development that was approved about 3 or 4 years ago, in which the neighbor said the cluster provisions are woefully inadequate. I'm going to show a slide to back that up. And he says we've got to improve those. And I'm saying specifically we can do stronger cluster provisions as developments are proposed in areas where we have suggested large lot sizes, such as Six Ponds, and with more difficulty in other zones, but we can still look at it. And then balance growth with open space protection measures. Continue the real estate and open space as it did in 2000 is still doing a wonderful job on this. Continue acquisition of open space parcels. One of the things we've suggested in the last couple of years is we can also place restrictions on municipal land that is appropriate for conservation. The town forest is not protected. I don't think most people in town are aware of that. It's just within a water recharge district. It should be protected. There is 100 acres of land north of Route 6, adjacent to Headwaters development, that is listed in the Herring River watershed in the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan as capable of supporting 100 dwelling units. This would be accessed by the single access to Headwaters development that already serves over 200 dwelling units. We would do well not to add more in that location. This is a land that the select board has no one else has no real plans for, and it would be something where we could very well put conservation restrictions on it. In that case, the conservation value is not as high as some other parcels, but there are other reasons besides conservation to consider protecting open space. Another big thing which we started on about 4 years ago was research and establish title on owners' unknown parcels. The town meeting passed $50,000 to do this. Again, Real Estate and Open Space Committee is very familiar with in the back there. And we've been fighting about how the article was written for the last 4 years, and there is a new article going to town meeting this year to clear that up so that we can finally get started. Oh, wait, we missed one. Keep going. Oh, we lost one of my slides. No, you didn't save the newest one.
Well, I have it on a flash. I have it on a flash drive.
Do you?
I apologize. Make sure, hold on one second, I'll make sure that it
Well, let me just tell you what the last
Apologize.
slide was going to show, and we may or may not get to. Some of you have already seen it. I did a photo of the East Harwich area, in which we talked about the amount of land that's been, Al, you're more familiar with this than anyone. The amount of land that's been preserved as cluster subdivisions, and the pattern is very unimpressive. It's basically, even though it's amounted to close to 50% of land in some of these cluster subdivisions, it's all, the developers have left it at the perimeter of the parcel. It's narrow buffer strips around the edges where, you know, your homeowners association has had maintenance issues on that, and it hasn't added up to a real open space or conservation plan. And that's simply contrasted on this slide, maybe, with the open space acquisition. No, we're not, no luck.
Oh, it's still opening the other one. This is.
Oh, okay. Let's go down. No? Production errors. We apologize.
Sorry, baby. If you really need, I'll go save it.
No. So with that said, I think it's a slide that simply backs up that the open space acquisition efforts through the town has created a much more viable pattern of open space protection. When we add parcels like Veroki to the Bells Neck Reservoir, the same thing with the Hall property that is now being acquired right now. When we add, when we're looking at others near the headwaters of Muddy Creek that may be added shortly, these are things that are really adding to contiguous habitat and have a much more cohesive open space and conservation policy. So let's stop. Let's forget about that.
I feel terrible.
And it was just one slide. And let's open it up
Good one, though.
for any comments or questions.
So what would be the process for putting the conservation restrictions on the town farm? Is this the land over by People Road?
Yes.
It actually goes across into Chatham.
Mhm.
where you have it the other day.
Cur-
What would be the process if it's already owned by
So-
sovereign entity, right, to restrict it?
It's already owned, it's under selectmen currently, so it would take a board such as the Real Estate and Open Space Committee or the Conservation Commission to recommend that it be put under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission. And there's already been some discussion about that. But it would be a selectmen's agenda. It would have to be a vote from the selectmen to put it under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission.
How likely is that to happen if we don't? Play the whole thing out, but if the conservation commission will take a position on it.
If the Conservation Commission, if we put it on a future agenda to discuss whether or not we wanted to request the selectmen do that, we can certainly put it on an upcoming agenda, or the Real Estate and Open Space Committee can make the recommendation to do so. I've spoken with the chairperson of the Real Estate and Open Space Committee about this, and to my knowledge, there's really no other plans for the town forest area. It's used and considered as conservation land essentially right now. It has a trail system on it. I think it would go well if we were to ask to put it under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission.
I'm passing around that one missing slide so people can take a look at it as it goes around.
Have a chap here. And so,
Don't worry.
here, and the open space,
Ha ha ha.
Oh, there it is.
light open space.
Here you go.
We put it up on the screen. So just
Okay, good.
just to explain in a sec,
I don't know why it won't go big.
the tan areas are our cluster subdivisions.
Get in there, get in there. Here you go.
And there's about 8 or 10 of those that have been approved over the last 20 years in the East Harwich area. And I think you can see that they really just are at the edges of each individual parcel. They do not relate to each other. They give the homeowners a little bit of protection in their backyards, but they don't amount to much of an open space plan. And surprisingly enough, in most of those developments, that open space is around 40 or 50% of the entire area. Certainly doesn't look like it, but I've done the calculations. The larger green areas are land bank or other form of public acquisition. Now, there are a couple of water department parcels on there, but on the far left is Hawk's Nest, thank you. And above Hawk's Nest, going up towards Route 6, is some of the land bank purchases that tie in with Hawk Nest very well. That's also part of the Six Ponds area. And another key area of conservation to the far right is the Isabel Smith and the area along Muddy Creek. So those are the sort of large blocks that we've been able to get through public land acquisition. As far as the idea of clustering, which has some positives and negatives, but the Six Ponds District has an average lot size of over 2 acres, as opposed to the rest of Harwich, which was largely built at an acre around Harwichport, but it's since gone to 1 acre zoning throughout town, except for the 2+ acres in Six Ponds. You can see the pit, the sand gravel pit, right in the middle there of a large area of undeveloped land, some of which is owners unknown. But if someone were able to consolidate that land and then want to develop it, you could do some very effective clustering in an area like that that has larger zoning requirements, and also tie it into Hawk's Nest. So I know one of the things the planning board would be able to look at would be improving the cluster provisions in that sort of area.
But where is that sand pit exactly? Is that I see it, but where is it?
Off of 39 is the access. Do you know on 39 where the rock chip is? It says, "Go
Yes,
Pats"?
yes.
Sorry, thank you.
This is the center of East Harwich.
Got it.
This is going back to Harwich Center along Route 39. So there is a road, it's a dirt road going in from here that was the access road to.
Got it, okay.
It's gated off right now.
So it's inactive?
It's
It is
inactive.
There's been a lot of work that's been done to seed it and so forth, I believe.
Yes, yeah, it actually has, it's revegetating actually quite nicely into a sand plain grassland heathland.
Yes.
What-
Does anybody else have any questions? And this is just, it's an update of a plan that people before David and I came along put a lot of work into, and we, over the past 5 years, I think we're doing a very good job in the town and with the town volunteers and boards and committees of what was set forth in those plans, and I think we're just trying to keep going with that for the next 5 years with better planning as far as, new acquisitions for real estate and to improve our facilities. And that was one of the goals of the survey, was to see where people in the town really see we're doing very well, and also pinpoint where we could probably do a little bit better.
Is the 1,000 acres not HCT?
HCT has between 600 and 700. On top of that, we have 1,000.
Okay, so of the 1,000 we have, that is the town has, how much of that falls into the non-restricted
Very little.
town
The
forests, headwaters?
the vast majority of town open space, besides water department and things over by the landfill, is conservation. That, especially the large parcels, Bell's Neck, Island Pond, Isabel Smith, Texera, those are care and custody of the Conservation Commission.
I know we've got the draft open space plan online. If we got Appendix D on there, that gives all the acreages for town-owned, conservation trust, the state, the water department is listed separately. So you could get a pretty good handle on it there. Anyone else? We don't need to prolong this.
Oh, golly, I think we all appreciate all the attention that this is getting, and the Cape Cod Chronicle did a very fine article, didn't it? Which alerted me to come to this meeting too. People have to be so thankful for all the things that have been carefully paid attention to, and how the planning board has also done a special good job in looking ahead. The town character, as you talk about it, is one of the aspects as you bring it into this. And so different people have different attitudes about what a different town character should be. And I think East Harwich will continue to be a question that people will debate. The picture that you have makes these small, tiny white areas look small, but actually, when you get into them, there's Mr. Fox coming along, and I could go from some various open space land on business property, which is open space actually, but not shown here in white.
That's true.
Which would then continue with other open space that we have, which would then continue, and so Mr. Fox could hunt quite a ways, crossing one street perhaps, and all the turkeys would follow behind him or in front of him. Yeah. Thanks so much, and I hope to hear more about it as you go ahead. The towns should be very grateful, and since this is being televised, I hope people are looking at it and appreciating the work that you're doing, and will jump in as you ask them to. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you. Thank you all very much for coming.
Please make sure you've signed it.
So we can't count